Our community, our hometown. This is Kearney Live, presented by 102.7 FM and KMO-TV. Kearney Live is a close-up look at the people, places, and events that matter to you. And now, here are the hosts of Kearney Live, Mike Davis and Jim Dickerson.
Yeah, there it is. That's, hey, 3 weeks in a row, Jim Dickerson is with me. I'm your host, Mike Davis, along with producer-engineer Brian Watts. You are listening to Kearney Live, the most important radio show anywhere on the planet.
Wow.
And folks around the planet are listening, in case you didn't know. Isn't that right, Jim?
That is correct, sir.
We do not lie when we say, we don't lie about anything on this air.
That is
not
correct,
Not
sir.
at all. I will say this, and welcome to the show, all of you, and good to see you 3 weeks in a row, Jim. Right?
That is correct, sir.
We've got Josh Hurlbert with us today.
That is correct, sir.
Yes, he is the... introduce yourself, Josh.
Yes, State Representative, District 12, representing Platte City, Smithville, and most importantly, Kearney.
There you go. I couldn't remember and wasn't sure. I am not sure about much this morning, and so I was really happy to hear you say District 12. Good seeing you here.
Yeah,
and
glad to be here.
coincidental, too, that you are you're the cousin of the gentleman we had on here last week.
I'm just happy that you let in the less better looking side of the family.
That's how I feel when they let me in here with Mike.
I don't know about that, Jim. So who needs to sit up? Me? Oh, Jim. All right, Brian's our producer is telling us to straighten up. Anyway, we'll talk to Josh here in a minute. Good to see you, and great having you in here again. And thanks for being part of the whole radio station here.
Absolutely.
We like having you in here. We like the local guys. We like the guys down in Jeff City doing the local stuff. The statewide, very, very good work by you all down there. Good, solid red state right here, Missouri. Jim, what do you have for our audience this morning that's exciting?
Well, I don't know if it's exciting, but the crew came in and messed up my chair. Hang on a second here. Can you go to Mike for a second?
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, fine.
Mike was writing.
I'm right. I'm trying to take care of business here, Jim. That's all right.
All right, I think these guys
I'll manage
are off
this.
the set.
There we go.
Close enough.
That's
Good
better.
enough.
Okay,
Hey,
now start.
So I've been told you need to check your peanut butter. Repeat, check your peanut butter.
Yeah.
Now here's
That's serious.
Well, here's the funny part. If you like the funny, so I saw the story on KPGZ News, by the way, and I called my wife and I said, "Do we use Jif peanut butter? Because we actually use it for the dogs a lot. We put it in the little Kongs. If you ever do that." And she's like, "No, I don't think we use Jif. I get home from a trip and right there is Jif." And so I was thinking, well, what are the chances really that we have that lot number? Oh, yeah, smack dab in the middle of it. So for those of you around this area who are wondering, is this lot number or are these lot numbers here locally? Yes, they are. There's
well,
quite a few
let's get
people.
to the headline portion of this, Jim, that the Jif peanut butter products have been recalled. There are people who can't see the screen who are driving around.
Good point. And if you're driving around, don't look at your screen. But so it's been recalled because there's been some salmonella cases out of it. We have heard reports of people, I say the dogs because they've given it to their dogs and have had some problems as well. So if you have the Jif products, and you can go to our story and there's a link and it takes you, because it's not just peanut butter, it's a bunch of products that were made out of the Lexington, Kentucky facility. They've been recalled from the shelves, but there's a good chance you may have it in your house because it was produced a little bit ago. So check and make sure that those products are out so you don't get sick. But those lot numbers are here locally, so it's not like we're immune from it or it's all over the place. So
that's important news, right?
That's the Jif products. And if you have any other questions, go to our website, click on news, look up the Jif story, and then there's actual links to where you can check those lot numbers, and it shows you how to do it if you're not familiar with how to check a lot number. Mike, back to you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm pretty happy to just get started with Josh here. I think there's a lot of things that we could cover. You sent us a real nice update, Josh, on after 5 months of your hard work and numerous negotiations and compromises. Compromises? What? Does that actually happen?
That darn Senate.
Right? And that happens. The General Assembly wrapped up the 2022 legislative session with a long list of substantive policy wins for Missouri families and businesses, and officially adjourned on Friday, May 13th. Gosh, that was just a couple weeks ago. Yeah, or roughly, yeah. Imagine that. And so many of them, and I just kind of wanted to go down the list. Let's talk about a couple I think that are pretty important, and I'm not necessarily going to go in order here if that's okay. One that sort of jumps out to me because this is an election year. This is our midterm year. And I think anybody who voted in the 2020 election knew that there were, regardless of whether you think there were shenanigans or not, votes were not counted. In fact, at 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the evening, Eastern time roughly, they shut the election down. They stopped counting votes. Now, I have no idea why a thing like this happens, but I do care about this, election integrity. Let's figure out what did happen. Let's straighten it out, and at least at the state level. So there was the HB 1878 bill on election integrity. Let's talk about that one, Josh.
Sure. I mean, to me, the most important part of it was the reinstitution of voter ID. We hadn't had photo ID for our elections for a couple cycles now, even though voters back in 2016 had approved it by over 60% of the vote. But it got tossed out on a technicality, so we fixed the technicality and was able to get that across the finish line. So you do have to present a photo ID. We have members in the General Assembly that were had elections that were determined on some pretty scant margins. So I know the Senate Minority Leader, he won his election his first election by 1 vote. And in that election, his aunt and uncle were later charged with fraudulently voting in that. Well, it's 2 votes. So
I've never understood. I got to be honest with you. I have never understood in my life why you would be opposed to voter ID or to presenting an ID. I just don't get that. You got to have an ID for everything else in the world.
Absolutely. You want to cash a check, you got to show your ID.
You can't even get stuff at the pharmacy without an ID.
Absolutely.
Or a fishing license. Or drive a car.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a hardship on voters. We will actually provide you the ID for free as a state. We don't want it to be a barrier to voting. We just want you to be who you say you are. And I agree. You cannot think that's a hardship, and we have to do it every day of our lives anyway.
Yeah, that one's always baffled me. That's one of the there's certain things you're like, well, who would be opposed to that? Yeah. And then it happens, and I'm like. Yeah, I'm with you, Mike, on that one.
Right on.
Well, it also the only reason you wouldn't want a photo ID, in my opinion, is you want to cheat.
Right.
I don't see any other.
And if I agree with you, I mean, there's nothing hard about the whole ID thing. The bill also requires the use of hand-marked paper ballots rather than the electronic voting machines, and mandates the use of air-gapped election equipment that prevent the possibility of electronic manipulation, and it authorizes the Secretary of State to audit election results and requires all election authorities or political subdivisions to have cybersecurity reviews. What's wrong with that?
It's another common sense measure that,
right.
I mean, our election machines on election day should not be connected to the internet. That's what the air gapped means, that they cannot be interfered with. They can just, you put it in the machine, they get counted, and then after the fact, we have results. But they are not tampered with. We know they're not tampered with. We know that no computer from Russia or Kazakhstan or whatever country that way is tampering with the election. So it's just another common sense measure.
Well, no doubt about it.
Once again,
no, Jim, this is common sense.
I don't understand why people would be opposed to this, because if you've ever had your credit card manipulated or hacked or anything else through the internet, which everybody has, then you know that if we have voting stuff, if somebody puts their mind to it, they know how to get into it. And then the other thing is, you have so many hands in that pot touching the data and all that sort of thing. I'm baffled again.
No, I agree.
I don't know what to say.
Well, there's also, it says The bill also allows no-excuse absentee voting up to 2 weeks prior to the date of an election, bans private donations to fund elections, and eliminates the presidential preference primary and establishes Missouri as a caucus state. That's a lot to take in. Help me,
Sure.
I'm a simple man.
Right. So the private donation. So what happened in 2020 is you had, most notably, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg create a foundation that was giving grants to local election authorities.
$400 million, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
Yes.
Was giving grants to local election authorities to help their get out the vote efforts. Well, 89% of that money went to get out the vote in Democratic precincts. So it was clearly a way to try and use government resources to increase the Democratic vote. So we just banned that completely. You know, RD doesn't matter. We're not going to have private donations funding our elections because then it starts to put a thumb on the scales. So
big time.
Yep.
What's the bill also allows no excuse absentee voting up to 2 weeks prior to the date of election. Say bans private donations. There was something else here that I saw.
Presidential primary.
Yes.
So
yes.
The inside baseball, what was actually happening behind the scenes, and Jay Ashcroft had been pushing this for years now, is that yes, we have a primary election here in the state of Missouri that costs the state, I want to say it's somewhere in this $7 to $8 million to have a presidential primary. Well, that presidential primary actually doesn't mean anything because we still did our delegates through a state caucus that the state party put on. It was kind of just a $8 million show vote. So kind of a...
Why would a thing...
So this was a way to save taxpayer money that we didn't necessarily need to have a presidential primary. We'll go to the caucus that was already in place and had been we've been actually been using for decades.
Wow. I mean, and none of us... I didn't know about this.
Yeah, me neither.
And see, stuff like this happens on our watch, Brian.
Right.
My goodness. All right, I like the sound of that. Well, anything else on that? Listen, I was pleased to hear it, and particularly, I think, as we opened up with the ID, which I already knew. I mean, if you voted in Missouri, you knew you had to show your driver's license or your photo ID. And then I love the hand-marked paper ballots, too, which I think...
Hadn't been as big an issue here in Clay County because that's pretty standard. But also, the other part of it is it allows everything to be audited by the Secretary of State. So, for example, voter rolls. Technically, you're supposed to be taken off the voter rolls if you haven't voted in the last 3 general elections. They just automatically cut you off. Well, some counties are better at updating their voter rolls than other counties. So this allows the Secretary of State to come in and help those counties just make sure that they're abiding by state law.
Yeah, and I guess I don't see a provision for it, but it just reminds me of the state of Georgia had people voting from in 2 different precincts.
Yes, this also banned those drop boxes, those unmanned drop boxes that got so much notoriety in Georgia that looked like a mail drop box, and you could just put your ballot in, and they have people stuffing all sorts of ballots at odd times of the evening.
It's probably going to impact our Facebook feed, but if you haven't seen 2,000 Mules, do yourself a favor.
And there go the ratings.
It probably will.
We have now been shadow banned.
Yeah, right. So, all right, let's get up to. We talked about law enforcement. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and our ratings stunk.
Before we go on to law enforcement, back to do you know how many states off the top of your head now require photo ID?
I couldn't tell you.
It's a lot. I know it's a lot more because a lot more passed.
I'm thinking 30%,
and
or more
of the states.
Yeah, I'm thinking
thought we
at
were
least
up around 50. I might have to research.
Could
that
be, and maybe so, but I was thinking at least. Anyway.
I'm interested to see how that changes, because it's no secret. We had people in a lot of states that were dead that voted, which is a good trick, by the way.
And one story I heard was in 2020, you had ballot harvesting going on in some of these blue states. So we had people that had moved from California but had lived in Missouri for 8 to 10 years, and they were still getting mailed California ballots because they had never taken their names off the rolls in California. So not allowing Missouri to get to that point was important to us in the legislature.
Well, and the bottom line is, if you look at the very basics of what we're trying to do, your elected representatives are supposed to represent the constituents of which they serve.
Right.
And when you go in there and you start messing with ballots and you start stuffing and you start altering, you're altering the very component of what this whole election thing was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And why you would want to be. Well, I understand why you'd want to mess it up, but it's kind of funny because when you come up with something that is so, to me, obvious, this will stop or seriously curtail fraudulent voting or people voting for blah, 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 and then you have so many people that come out against it. It baffles me.
I am convinced after this law that Missouri will have the most secure elections in the nation. I
love the sound of that. Brian did the research for me. As of 2021, 36 states, that's where I got the 30, and I was thinking 30. So that you are right, we're over 50%, have enacted some form of voter ID requirements. Lawsuits have been filed against many of the voter ID requirements on the basis that they are discriminatory with an intent to reduce voting, which we've just established is nonsense. But,
and look at Georgia.
Yeah,
and
thank you, Brian.
Not to get on this for 28 minutes, but look at Georgia. They said, and they threw all this tirade, and they even kicked out the All-Star game because voter suppression and all this, that, and the other. And last night, today's Wednesday, last night, or for last night's election, their voting numbers were way over and beyond what they were in the past. So no suppression going on there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that argument's going out the window fast.
All right, and let's move along here. You bet. Preventing efforts to defund law enforcement. That's Senate Bill 678, and then it has a 2 in brackets. I'm not sure what that means, but
I think that was just its second. It was a substitute amendment.
Oh, okay.
2,
so let's talk about it then.
Yeah. So as I'm sure you all remember, back last summer, the Kansas City Police or the Kansas City Mayor and City Council put a measure on passed an ordinance that basically defunded the Kansas City Police Department about 4% of the general revenue budget that this city has.
Is it 4 or 40? I thought it was 40.
Well, so by statute, the Kansas City is supposed to fund their police department by 20% of their general revenue. Now, they've been up closer to 24% or 26%, I guess.
Yeah.
So this requirement, that what we passed is that they can't go below 25% now instead of the old 20%, which is still below where they've been historically funded, so they could even cut a little bit. But we don't need to be taking our police funding in high crime times like we're in right now and putting it towards community measures like the city council wanted to do. I mean, they spent $15,000 trying to get Floyd Mayweather to come do a speech, and then he didn't show up, and the money was gone and disappeared. That's the kind of stuff they wanted to fund by taking away this money from police. And I would rather have boots on the ground and actually help our police funding and help our police do the jobs they have and know that we have their back.
And protect every single citizen
absolutely
in the county, in the state, wherever you are. I mean, the police are there to protect you people, everyone, no matter how you choose to vote. So, all right, I don't want to go too far on that. We're getting ready to take a break. I want to make sure that I'm sure you do.
Questions
I imagine you do, Jim.
Can we do it when we come back?
Jim has lots of questions about lots of things, and we will come back and address all of those along with Josh Hurlbert, District 12 representative right here in the state of Missouri, the beautiful red state of Missouri. Stay with us. You're listening to Kearney Live. We'll be right back.
Corporate underwriters of KPGZ programming include these fine businesses.
Simplify your banking, simplify your life. It's easy with Kearney Trust Company. Kearney Trust goes beyond convenient locations and good customer care to offer banking services that make managing your finances quicker and easier than ever before. Online, bill pay, e-statements, and mobile banking. are available to give you a positive banking experience so you can get back to your life and activities. Kearney Trust also provides capital to people and businesses so they can achieve their goals. Whether you know exactly what you want or just need someone to talk to about your dream, you can speak with them and work on that dream. Kearney Trust Company is your partner for success with 2 convenient locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
Electric cooperatives are different. We have a sense of pride in our local community and support the people who live here. That's why Platte Clay Electric Cooperative supports local schools, takes an active role in economic development, and works hard to keep costs down for its members. We exist for one purpose, to empower communities and energize life with safe and reliable energy. To learn more about how Platte Clay Electric Cooperative is working to achieve that mission, visit www.pcec.coop. Platte Clay Electric Cooperative.
You may have noticed your shoulder hurting, or maybe a kink in your neck. The culprit may be looking right at you. Your phone. Think about how you use it. Does that pain feel familiar to you?
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Strathman with Kearney Family Chiropractic Center, and I've been practicing chiropractic health in Kearney for over 22 years. When you come to see me, I identify what's wrong and determine if I can help you. If I can, I create your personalized plan for relief.
When you have pain, you can make an appointment by calling 816-628-6738, or you can visit the office at 301 South Platte Clay Way, Suite B in Kearney. Kearney Family Chiropractic Center. Heal yourself.
And welcome back to Kearney Live. We've got Josh Hurlbert. Right? Good Irish name.
Something along those lines.
Look at you. Yeah, I like that. Just like a little leprechaun. Isn't that nice?
For those of you who don't know, he's wearing a kilt.
And he's got a bowl
and
of
you'll
Lucky.
never see it.
He's got a bowl of Lucky Charms in front of him. Those are delicious, by the way. They still have those.
Yeah.
I know. Our grandkids got some, and they get the cereal they want. Jeannie buys them the cereal, and they eat a bowl or so, and then I see, look, there's a box of Lucky Charms left over.
I'm not allowed to eat that anymore. I got to eat like light.
I do too, Jim. But
stuff that I used
to
make fun of
Cheerios for you,
right? And I can't stop myself.
It can't be the real Cheerios.
No, I got to tell you. And then I will pound a couple of Jethro-sized bowls of those things. At night, and it's like dessert, and I'm a kid again, and I'm trying to fish out those little marshmallows in there, the Lucky Charms, the pink hearts, and the silvery stars, or whatever it was, and they're delicious.
So what I do is I take the cereal box.
Yes.
We're going to get back to you in a minute. What I do is I take the cereal box, and I start off, and I grab like 2 or 3 in my hand, which then turns into a handful. Next thing you know, I got the box. Trying to get it, but anyway.
Not to waste any. Waste not, want not. Right.
So back to you. Yeah, thank you. I haven't done that in a while. I blame that one on Mike.
I did. I derailed it.
We were talking a little bit about budget and funding and the police and all that. And one of the things that I have not understood, and this is not new. We talked about this last week. This has been going on for years. But we got into this thing where police, fire, and then your basic city services, that is what your taxes need to fund, the essentials. And we got into this thing where government all of a sudden is supposed to be all things for all people, and we're funding every little silly project around, and we're taking away from the things we need: law enforcement, fire, paramedic, all that, and then water and whatnot. How do we get away from that? How do we get back? If we took the amount of money that goes, we'll use the state in this case, but it also works at the city level, the money that goes to the state, and we did it on basic services, because now we can't fix our streets because we're funding Pete's Ferret Shop because they did a great thing for the community. How do we get back to essential services.
Well, it's getting back to those fiscal conservatives and electing more fiscal conservatives. Now, the problem with this year, especially when it came to the state budget, was that we had so many billions of dollars of Biden bucks just floating out there. Our budget last year was $35 billion. This year was $48.5 billion. We spent that much more money this year, and it's almost entirely federal dollars that came down from the Biden administration. That a lot of them went to projects. Some of them are good projects. I know the Northland Career Center here north of the river, where we can get some real state-of-the-art career education and workforce development education for our high schoolers. They're trying to build a new facility in the Platte Purchase and 152 area, and we were able to get them $30 million to kind of jumpstart that project. So some of that is good, but when it comes down to eliminating basic services and funding other things, especially out of local and city budgets, I mean, that just comes down to electing the right people. I mean, if you're electing people that promise you the moon, you're going to get those kind of events instead of the actual basics that we need as a society.
Well, I think, and because you were talking about Biden bucks, and we talked a little bit about this last week with Victor. We had all these funds that were COVID funds, and that was all well and good. And you look back at it, and you're like, okay, what did that have to do with COVID? Because some of this stuff that this money got spent on, I'm like, and don't get me wrong, some of it great. It was money. It was there. Use it.
Helped a lot of businesses.
But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not talking about the payroll protection. I get that. That was different because those businesses were affected by COVID. Absolutely. But I've seen some stuff where money was spent from COVID money, which, don't get me wrong, or don't forget, that's tax money. It didn't come
it's your
out
money.
Of the air.
Yeah, that's
you're
the point.
paying for it. And we're paying for all this weird stuff that I'm like, okay, what does that have to do with COVID? Mm-hmm. And now, if you don't feel bad about that, we've got the monkeypox.
Oh my gosh! Well, all right. Well, let's save that for another show.
There go the ratings again,
right? We're gonna just drive this one's just. This is gonna take a nosedive.
I think that happened the moment I walked in the studio. Unfortunately,
no. All right. Well, then let's get something that. How about tax relief? Tax relief for Missouri taxpayers, and House Bill 2090. Now, this one, as I read through this, Josh, it sounds convoluted to a simple guy like myself, a simpleton like myself.
Sure. So what?
Help me.
What it does is if you pay personal income taxes, we had so much money left over, we want to make sure that we gave a rebate back to the taxpayers that are paying that income tax. So every taxpayer who pays income tax is going to get $500 back. As long as there is to get it out of the Senate, we had to put in a top income bracket there. So if you make more than $150,000 as a single or $300,000 as a married filing jointly, then you'll get that $500 per taxpayer.
I'm going to take my $500 and fill up my truck with gasoline.
Had that been amended because people were confused that if you didn't pay $500 in taxes, you were still going to get $500?
No. So if your state tax liability was under $500, you are only going to get up to what your liability was.
Right. Yeah.
So if you only had $300 in then you were in that you had to pay, then you're only going to get $300 back.
Right. A lot of people were confused about that, and I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. And in effect, I mean, the state's giving you some tax money back, which is, where does that happen?
We took it from you. You ought to have it back.
Exactly.
So we had more money than we knew what to spend with, as I said earlier.
It doesn't happen in Washington. And it doesn't happen in Illinois. This much I know.
Where?
Illinois. There's no noise in Illinois.
Okay. Have you ever been up to Des Moines?
Des Moines. I love the Des Moines. Yes.
Yes, I have.
So why is it when Mike derails the show, the train doesn't come through? It only applies to me.
Well, we already wrecked.
I don't know, Jim. Why would that be?
Well, there's relevance to my attempted derailments.
People like Mike better than Mike.
Oh, don't be silly. Now, this one is a good one, too, Josh. This is the No Patient Left Alone Act. And that's really important. Let's talk about that one.
Sure. So this came out of some experiences several of our members had when it came to COVID. They had loved ones that were hospitalized with COVID, and no one was allowed in the room to help them. No one was allowed to be their advocate. and medical decisions were made without the patient or family being able to talk it over that way. Or, I mean, from a pure human standpoint, being there with their family member.
Just to be present.
Just to be present, because even being present has shown to have medical outcomes that you can't explain.
Right.
So by locking them in a room by themselves, you're going to have worse outcomes, and that we saw that happen in COVID. So we want to put protections in there so the patient can have someone. The hospital can't, just rudimentally deny everyone. There's a process now. You can go through a list that you can name 2 caregivers that you want to have with you that are, especially in a time of COVID, are willing to take that risk and be with you in the hospital room.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, the tragedy of
absolutely.
Even during lockdowns, when you saw that there were people who were not ill necessarily, but were in nursing homes, and you could go up to the window outside the building and sort of tap on the window and sort of yell, I guess, really loud. But I mean that's just inhumane.
Absolutely, that's the way we looked at it. In the legislature, and that's why I'm happy to see this one get through the process and get across the finish line.
No doubt about it. We're visiting with Josh Hurlbert, District 12 representative right here in the state of Missouri. And we're going over really what I would say is a pretty successful legislative session that you guys have accomplished quite a bit down in Jeff City. There was another one here that I thought was interesting, too, in terms of economic activity. Here it is, attracting economic activity to Missouri. And it's meant to help Kansas City be selected to host matches for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which would have a potential economic impact of nearly $700 million. Is it? For the state. Wow.
FIFA or FIFA?
FIFA?
Yep. Did I say FIFA? Darn it.
I think you were thinking of fee, fi, fo, fo, fo.
I'm thinking, I know, there's so many acronyms in our world.
So Kansas City's in the running to get FIFA World Cup matches here in the 2026 World Cup that the United States is hosting jointly with Canada and Mexico. They're actually going to announce who's going to be hosting those matches on June 16th here in a couple weeks. One of the things that FIFA told us they wanted to have as part of our application was taking off sales taxes off of tickets, which for us as a state was kind of a no-brainer that way. We don't need, obviously we have more money than we know what to do with anyway, so we didn't need, we didn't need to be collecting sales taxes off of ticket revenue for tickets sold at Arrowhead, especially when our local hotels and businesses are going to already be affected. This is a month-long journey for a lot of these international soccer fans. They will shut down their lives and come and follow their soccer team for a month here for the World Cup. And they're expecting every hotel room in Kansas City to be full should we get World Cup matches here, because they're also expecting a team or two to be based out of Kansas City. So,
wow.
Especially with the new airport and some very nice facilities that we have here on the soccer front, thanks to Sporting Kansas City, that we are in a very good position to host some matches, and this just helped put our application over the top.
Right. So 2026, and that's the FIFA World Cup, and so the sales tax exemption is sort of a no-brainer, as you indicated, because of the $700 million potential economic impact. Now, I remember hearing something about this on some sports talk radio stations that I periodically listen to when I'm not listening to 102.7. Brian's shaking his head. Yes, thanks. Keep doing that. But assuming that all of these teams that are playing, I mean, is there a chance that if certain teams lose that they won't show up because they in the tournament they lose a game and you're out? And in other words, is there any chance that nobody would show up?
So the thing with Kansas City is we're not going to be hosting the World Cup final. I mean, no, that's going to go to L.A. or New York. I mean, it's pretty clear. But we will be hosting some of the group round games. So that'll be a round robin type style, so that we know that we're going to have teams and we're going to have fans for those games. So.
Okay, so the sort of the bracket for those, because I don't understand the soccer, folks. I just don't. But the brackets would, in some manner, guarantee a certain number of games.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Yep.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be like, yeah, no, you lose. Sorry, you're not going to Missouri. So forget about it.
Yeah.
No, not going to happen. All right. Good having you here, Josh. So let's see. There's a couple of others. We talked about the no patient left behind, election integrity, tax relief, and preventing efforts to defund law enforcement. What were you thinking? But I think we covered most of those. There were some things that we talked about before the show, before we went on the air, and that was redistricting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, plus the fact that because of the redistricting, you won't represent Kearney anymore, which breaks my heart.
Absolutely. So, as the way it works for the state house districts that I'm honored to represent one of is that a panel, the governor appoints a panel of 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. They get in a room over a period of a couple months and draw a map. So the map that I am now living in is now going to be called House District 8, and it has all of Smithville, and it comes over and gets rural Kearney, so right up to city limits on the west, north, and east side of town, then goes over to the edge of the county by Lawson, and then it goes up into Clinton County and picks up Holt, Lathrop, Plattsburgh, and Gower.
I have a question. I know it's a shocker.
Here we go.
What is the districting of the map based upon?
It's all population, so they're trying to get, for example, the district that I represent, because it's Kearney, Smithville, and Platte City, it's one of the fastest growing ones in the state. I was in the top 10 list of most populated state rep districts. So my district had to change because I had too many people in it. So they have to realign those districts to try and get them so they're proportionally equal.
Can we get some people to move out?
I like people living up here. So.
Oh, I don't think that's the way it works. That's funny right there, though.
Well, I'm not happy about this.
I'm not either. I don't.
You leaving us? But,
why do you hate us? Why do you hate us, Josh Hurlbert, here in Kearney? Why? Don't go.
So for those of you who are sitting there driving around now in a really bad mood, and those watching on KMO-TV who just punched a hole in their TV, who's our new rep? We already know the answer.
Yeah,
to this,
Kearney city limits is going to be represented by Doug Ritchie, who currently already represents Kearney south of 19th Street. So he'll come up and get all of Kearney city limits. But, I mean, if you're just outside city limits, whether you're at the Tobacco Barn Farm just north of town, I would still be your representative.
Well,
so,
there you go.
Yeah, while we're up at Tobacco Barn Farm having a good time, we know that we're being represented by Josh. So we got that going for us.
What else is going on, Josh, in the state of Missouri?
Well, can we, while we're on the redistricting thing, before we go to break, that also affects a lot of people in they did federal redistricting.
Correct. So
as well.
We were responsible for federal redistricting for the United States House of Representatives. So the process works just like it would any other bill. We pass a bill, it goes to the Senate, we hash out a compromise, and then send it to the governor. So we passed a bill back in January with new congressional lines. It sat in the Senate for 9 weeks. Then they were finally able to get something and pretty much shut down the Senate for that entire time because they could not get anything else done. They were that at odds over what the map looked like. And then they came back to us. We didn't like their map, so we ended up having to pass a second map, which is, I think, what Brian is pulling up on the computer now. But that map,
for those of you driving around, you're not going to see this.
So Kearney will still be, regardless of how the lines were drawn, Kearney is still being represented by Representative Sam Graves in Congress, just like they are right now. The district changed a little bit for him. He picks up all of Ray County, which he didn't have any of here locally, and he loses some of Jackson County. But
so he's District 6.
He's District 6, yeah.
Right.
So yes,
that's pretty much all of
northern
Missouri.
I think
entire
one
northern
of the
third
key,
of the state.
Yeah, one of the big changes around here is if you're in District 5, or you were in District 6, I think you lost a little bit to District 5 because that's Cleaver's, and he moves up a little bit into Clay County.
Correct. So he did stop at the Gladstone city limits there at 77th Street, and now he goes all the way up to Smithville city limits, just north of 435.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's a higher density, more dense population area.
Sure.
Because it's a tiny little speck as I look at the map. But yet it's more concentrated population.
Congressman Cleaver's old district, the old number 5, had all of Ray County, Lafayette, and Saline as well. So he lost those rural counties, and they kind of consolidated him into the heart of the Kansas City area.
Right.
That is going to change his electorate base quite a bit, isn't it?
It didn't. I mean, his numbers will stay fairly comparable to where they have been.
Not number-wise, but his demographic is going to change because you're moving farther up into the Northland.
You're moving it into the Northland, but again, he lost Ray, Lafayette, and Saline that he did have.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then District 4 is another large rural district, which covers a good deal of central Missouri, and looks like the Ozarks area somewhat, which is predominantly red. And yet I'm looking at districts 1, 2, and 3, and District 1 is looks like East St. Louis.
It is all of St. Louis City, and then a little bit of North St. Louis County.
Okay.
Ferguson, Florissant, Maryland Heights, that area.
And then District 2, oddly enough, seems to be surrounded by some District 3.
There have been jokes that District 3 is the Pac-Man of this whole map. So it's just eating District 1 and 2 there.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll go with that. You know, it's
again, it's this map is not perfect. It's the compromise that we could get across the finish line, and happy that the governor was able to sign it this past Wednesday and get into law, so our election authorities can start getting it ready for the primary in August.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that'll be effective this year.
Yep.
Or
Very good.
this election.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good to know. So make sure you know who your representative is.
Which district? Of course, it'll show up on your ballot.
Yep, it will.
Assuming your ballot is correct.
Take us to break, Jim.
Well, I'd love to do that. When we come back, we're going to talk to Josh about a little more stuff that impacts you in your daily life. You're listening to Kearney Live. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Without the support of community underwriters, we wouldn't be here. So a huge thanks to these particular businesses for supporting KPGZ.
You value choices when it comes to the products and services you bring into your home. That's why Platte Clay Electric Cooperative gives you control over the energy you use. PCEC offers members ways to save with energy efficiency rebates and demand billing. You even have the power to choose the resources used to produce your power. To learn more, visit www.pcec.coop/power. Platte Clay Electric Cooperative. Your power, your way.
Migraine headaches, the throbbing in your temples, the pounding in your forehead, extreme sensitivity to light and sound. Your neck feels so tight it could snap off. Oh, the debilitating pain.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Strathman with Kearney Family Chiropractic Center, and I've been practicing chiropractic health in Kearney for over 22 years. When you come to see me, I identify what's wrong and determine if I can help you. If I can, I create your personalized plan for relief.
When you have pain, you can make an appointment by calling 816-628-6738, or you can visit the office at 301 South Platte Clay Way, Suite B in Kearney. Kearney Family Chiropractic Center. Heal yourself.
Online banking at Kearney Trust Company gives you 24/7 access to your checking, savings, money markets, CDs, and loan accounts. You can access your accounts anytime from your home, office, and mobile devices. Online banking with Kearney Trust combines convenience and flexibility to bank on your own terms. Kearney Trust Company is a partner for success with 2 locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Kearney Live. If you think we're not having fun here today, you're mistaken.
I thought we were coming back to me because I was going to introduce our next,
all right. Well, go ahead.
Our next governor, Josh Hurlbert.
That is not true.
Well, how do you know?
I think Josh made that very clear.
Well, I don't.
He's at the pinnacle.
I don't mean this next cycle. A couple cycles down from now.
Well, go ahead and lie about it, Jim, if you want to. I don't care.
All right,
it's your funeral.
You guys watch, and in about 8 years, we want to.
Josh will be governor.
He'll be governor,
and Jim will say, "See,
I'll be 90 years old."
I told you.
Walker.
I'll make you in charge of the aviation out of MoDOT.
Hey, now.
Awesome. Get that all fixed up.
Thank you for that, Jim. I appreciate it. And we are visiting with Josh Hurlbert. Yes, and the second Hurlbert in as many weeks that have been in here. It's just wonderful. We just love it. It's a family show, you see.
Yeah.
For those of you tuning in next week, there will not be a Hurlbert because it's the chamber lunch, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. That's right.
So Mike and I will be having White Castle or whatever they serve.
White Castle.
I don't think we've
Do you
had
know who the next president is of the chamber?
Oh, my gosh.
Brian's scared. Don't be scared, Brian.
It's one Brian Watts.
Wow.
That guy right
That guy
there.
right there, yeah.
When do you take over?
Yep. It's
You might want to
June.
look that
No,
up.
it's June. I was thinking of the things. It's June. Yeah.
Just thinking of a White Castle.
Yeah. No.
Actually, no, and it's funny because Jim joked about Brian becoming president of. He said, "You need to be president of the Chamber of Commerce." As
years
right
ago,
when we first started the radio station, and Brian said he just rolled his eyes.
Yeah, Brian didn't believe him at all.
And
so.
look where he's at today.
And
I
so
know.
what am I saying now?
You're
Josh
saying
Hurlbert.
Mark it down.
I'm not talking about next year
and believe
like
it.
That. Just mark it in your calendar.
Eventually.
Flip it forward a few years. And
Jim's a fibber, but he's not fibbing about this.
That's how that stuff works, Josh.
Right?
You be ready.
I just want to know if you, as chamber president, will promise to bring a White Castle to Kearney.
I cannot promise anything like that.
You can buy those frozen ones, I think, can't you? They're not the same.
Not the same.
No, of course not.
Why did we lose? Man, we have derailed this thing. Like,
I'll say.
I told you we could.
Why did we lose White Castle? We used to have them. What happened? What went wrong?
I think they started selling them in the stores, you know?
Well, they haven't in St. Louis. When I go to St. Louis, I'll be there next 2 weeks from now, I think, or whatever it is.
Sounds like a state issue, not a Kearney Chamber of Commerce issue.
That's right.
That's the state guy.
For those of you who didn't get throttled out because Mike mentioned mules and voting and all that stuff, go to our Facebook page, and if you'd like to see a White Castle in Kearney, let's start this tradition now.
I'm going to start a Change.org petition as soon as the show is over.
I like that.
White Castle in Kearney, you heard it here first.
We've got a couple minutes left, and I wanted you, Josh, to mention you took a new job.
Yeah, I did. So I started this summer with the Herzog Foundation. So they are one of the groups that are managing the most scholarships. So to help kids find the educational fit that best fits them. So whether that's private, public, whatever it is, we want to help those kids find their best education. So I'll be handling their scholarships here over the summer. So.
I have learned. Before everybody freaks out, Josh is still going to be a state rep.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't want everybody to think
we're only in session January through May, so May 13th was the final day this year. So
excellent. So I didn't want people to freak out and go, he's not going to be a rep anymore.
No, it's a terrific organization, and what the Stanley M. Herzog Charitable Foundation. Their mission is to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality, Christ-centered K-12 education, so that families can culture and culture can flourish. And as you read, I read through this, and they've got a whole link about Stan Herzog, and he sent his kids to, as I recall from my reading, that he sent them to St. Joseph, to Christian school up there. Is that correct?
Yes, St. Joseph Christian, I believe, is kind of where they all went. But, up around here, I know that they recently had a news release where, their endeavors are making a $6 million impact here in Clay County.
Right.
With all the boot camps and trainings that they're hosting in their new facility. That's still under construction in Smithville, but it's a great organization to be a part of. I'm looking forward to helping kids find their best education possible.
Yeah, it's nice to have that option, and certainly the Herzog Foundation has just done a terrific job, and it really is. I think is something to be quite proud of in our area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested to see, because we talked a little bit about, they were in here talking about the foundation, and one of the things we talked about, which the numbers I don't think are completely coming in yet, but we'll know here soon. The number of people that are leaving public schools now to go to private schools and get an education like that are skyrocketing, is my understanding.
Absolutely has been. So your enrollment numbers in public schools have been dropping. So especially, and it's been accelerated the past couple of years. I know homeschooling, which is what I was and what we're doing with our 6-year-old daughter, is it doubled over the past 2 years, mostly because of pandemic. But even as school started to return to normal this past year, it was still up 85% over where it had been.
Well, and I think the interesting thing that came out of the Rona was when you started this, here go the ratings again. When we started this when they started doing the online schooling and parents started to really see what was being taught, everybody freaked out.
Absolutely.
Because it was not what you thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother discussion. And so...
Well, we touched on it during the school board elections. We talked a lot about that. You bet. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of, I think, here, Jim's going to derail again, but you know what? I can. There is a lot of stuff that's come out, I think, as a result of Rona, that not just school, in general, that people had no clue was going on. And I think a lot of eyes have been opened. And you hear us joking about the ratings, and a lot of this stuff that you've heard a lot of it with Twitter, but we've known here that this has been going on for a long time now. Certain words that we say on this program, certain things that we put into our news stories will cause, and we can see the analytics on it, will cause an automatic, we call it a throttle down or a throttle back.
Because of the algorithms that are written.
It picks up.
Yes, by these high-tech social media firms.
And so what we've learned is, and other places know this as well, when we do our stories here, when we do our shows, when we do our news, video news or whatever, it actually picks up on words that we say, and it'll throttle it back if it's something that they just don't want distributed.
That's true.
And we can absolutely see it happening, and it's... I don't know how we get a hold of that. But.
Well, and the thing is, Jim, what you're talking about is First Amendment rights. And we have a right to say the things that we're saying here, even on the air, as long as the FCC agrees that we're keeping it clean. And, but by and large, we don't get heavily political on here. But when we say certain things and sort of indicate that, you somewhat, our conservative values or whatever, it impacts our business.
Well,
right
and
here.
we know certain things. So
negatively.
Elections is always a big one.
Yep.
Law enforcement, when we talk about law enforcement, it'll take a dive. When we talked about mask wearing and Rona, took a dive.
Right.
One time we threw
anything with
we threw in a word just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember what the word was? We did it in text and we did it video. Ivermectin. And it
that's
went
right.
right over the cliff.
Yep. That's
and
right.
we did it as a test, and well, it worked.
So just
so
for your information out there, and these are the kinds of things that, listen, if your First Amendment rights are, in question, regardless of your political persuasion, it matters. And so you may think, well, that's just because you're conservative, and so we don't want to hear what you have to say or think anyway. Well, let me tell you something. Everybody in this country is born with that right to the freedom of speech. And if it starts getting messed with on one side, believe me, they're going to mess with you on both sides of the aisle. So it's not something that we want to fool around with. Josh Hurlbert, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being you. Is it possible that you can take credit for that?
I can take credit for that. Though now I have a White Castle craving that I don't know how I'm going to fix.
Don't forget to go below on Facebook, right down there. For those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, down there in the comment section, White Castle. We're going to start that right today. And you come up for re-election
It'll be August and November.
This year. Yeah. So don't forget to vote for Josh. Right. If you're in Kearney, I don't even want to go into it, but it's a beautiful thing. For those of you listening outside of Kearney, and we know there were thousands until we mentioned mules and election and all that, but now we're down to about 4. But anyway.
Well, we appreciate all of you. We appreciate the town of Kearney and the state of Missouri, everybody around, all of you listeners and our sponsors. You're the best. Next week, we will be, as Jim indicated, we'll be at the Chamber Luncheon, so we'll do a Best of Kearney Live, and we'll be returning the following week. Stay around for that one. We thank you for being with us today. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
White Castle in Kearney!